Hello and welcome. I'm Sean Wendt. I'm your host here at the Wendt Their Cruising channel. For today, I want to talk about cruise ship cabins and which is the best cruise ship cabin for you. To start, does it even matter? Well, to some people, the answer is no. It's a small group, but for some people, the answer truly is no. If you're doing a booze cruise where you're going to be out on deck drinking all day, or then in restaurants or at the nightclub all night, or maybe an excursion heavy trip where you're not going to be spending very much time in the room, then maybe it really doesn't matter which cabin you have. Any cabin will work for you if you just need to use the bed for a few hours. But beyond that, maybe it does matter. So, what are some of the factors that we should look at? Maybe a good place to start would be, should I take a guarantee cabin? Because it's cheaper, right? So if you go on to many of the cruise booking sites, you can pick a specific room for a higher fare than you can pick the guarantee cabin. And a guarantee cabin basically is just that. They're guaranteeing you that you will get a cabin at least as good as what you are picking. So if you pick a interior guarantee, they're going to guarantee you an interior room at least. They could theoretically have to bump you up to a higher level room, but they're guaranteeing you that level room. Is that a good deal? Well, that depends. Again, if you really are uncaring as to what room you have, then maybe it is a good deal. Maybe it's worth saving the money. I do think there's something of a gamble there. Cruise companies do tend to overbook ships. You'll see it in the news over the last several months. Royal Caribbean's got caught a few times overbooking cabins. And so when cruise companies put the schedule out, they know that some people will book a room and then will cancel before the actual sailing date. Many of them cancel before the final payment deadline, which is usually 3 to 4 months before sail date. So their guarantee cabins are based off this notion that some people are going to cancel and they'll be able to slide you into one of those cabins. So should you book it? Well, maybe. You are running a gamble that enough people are going to cancel for you to actually get that cabin. Now, in almost every case, this works out fine, but occasionally you'll see that there is not a cabin available, and they wind up offering people some sort of offer to switch to a later cruise. So the odds of you actually getting bumped from the cruise are low, but they're not zero. So there is something of a gamble involved there. But also, do you mind giving up the fact that you're not going to have any say over where it is you're getting assigned? So, assuming you do actually care, then maybe a guarantee cabin is not the one for you. But what are the factors we need to think about? Well, all right, so there's certain things to consider. I guess one is cost, right? So how much more is it to book in a balcony cabin as opposed to an interior cabin? And it really varies from cruise line to cruise line. It varies from sailing to sailing. So there's a lot of variables involved in that. But I was trying to figure this out and just looking at some dates in January out of Port Canaveral. I was looking on Utopia of the Seas for Royal Caribbean, and there was about a 43% difference in the cruise fare between an interior cabin and an ocean view balcony cabin. So that's a fairly significant difference, but the difference was only a 15% difference between the interior cabin and a boardwalk facing view balcony. So if your goal is to just avoid being in the interior room where you can be somewhat claustrophobic, not having a window, then you can get a balcony for only 15% more. Now, looking on Princess Cruises on the Sky Princess out of Port Canaveral in January 2026, the difference there was about 21% between having an interior room and a balcony there. The Sky Princess does not have any interior facing balconies like the large Royal Caribbean ships does. So smaller difference than you would see on Royal Caribbean, but again, a larger difference than from an interior facing balcony. So there's a lot of variables involved there. Generally speaking, it is going to cost more money to have a balcony than an interior room. So if cost is a significant factor, or if you can take a longer cruise with more days for the same price by taking an interior room, then maybe that's worth it to you. So if cost is a factor, that will certainly play into which cruise cabin that you actually wind up choosing. So beyond that, what are some of the things that we should look at that may be important to us? Well, one, I would ask, are you prone to seasickness? Personally, I am prone to seasickness. I got sick on a whale watching excursion one time in Monterey. I got sick on a catamaran cruise thing in Hawaii. So I know I am prone to seasickness. Now, I have never once been sick on a cruise ship. They're much larger ships. And so even though sometimes I definitely feel the movement, I've never had it to the point where I've been nauseous on a cruise ship. But some people are really prone to seasickness. So if that's you, you might want to consider a room that is more center in the ship. Think of it like a teeter-totter or a seesaw, right? The middle of the seesaw moves less than either end of it. So as you're going over waves, that middle section really moves quite a bit less. And generally lower is what's recommended as well. So a lower level center or middle cruise ship cabin is better than at either end of the ship if you're prone to seasickness. Now, I would also consider here, like what cruise are you going on, right? If you're going on a, Bahamas cruise where you're not even going that far from Florida and it's not during hurricane season, then the likelihood of you having rough seas between Florida and the Bahamas are probably pretty low. So even at the extremes of the ship, you're probably not going to have very much movement. Whereas if you're taking, let's say you're going through Drake Passage on an Antarctica exhibition, or even sailing outside the Golden Gate in a cruise leaving out of San Francisco, those are some really choppy waters sometimes. And so if you're going to a destination where you're more likely to have choppier seas, or maybe crossing the North Atlantic in the winter, then I think maybe being more center on the ship might be more beneficial to you. Now, beyond that, okay, well, what about the view? If I'm going to have a balcony, do I have an obstructed view? So for some people, that's not a deal breaker. For some, that it is, right? So look at on the lower decks on most ships that have balconies, that's roughly where the lifeboats are. Now, generally not right in front of your balcony, although some ships it looks pretty close to that, but at least you may be looking at the top of a lifeboat. So you can see the ocean in the distance, but when you look directly in front of your balcony or try to look down, you're going to be looking at a lifeboat. You're not going to be looking into the water. So if that's a deal breaker for you, then maybe you want to be higher up, right, to give you that better view, be able to see more of the ocean. I was with somebody on a cruise recently, and they were on the deck immediately above the lifeboats, and they joked that they could climb into the lifeboat from their balcony cabin if they wanted to, which that tells you what their view looked like right outside of the room. So you'll see the obstructed balcony sometimes at a lower rate. Maybe that's okay. If you really want a balcony cabin just to be able to get outside and get some fresh air, then that may still work for you. But if you want the balcony cabin for view, then maybe it's good, maybe it's not good, right? Maybe that's a deal breaker for you. Then I guess I would say forward or aft, like does this matter? Well, if you were at either end of the ship, other than the seasickness aspect, it might matter. If you're at the forward end of the ship, there's thrusters there they use to turn the ship. That's also where the anchor generally is on a ship. So when they drop anchor, like if you're at a tender port, that makes a lot of noise and that can wake you up. The thrusters can cause vibrations in the room, particularly on the lower levels of the ship. Same thing sort of at the back end of the ship. That's where the engines are, right? That's where the propellers are at the back of the ship. So they tend to create a good deal of vibration that can be felt certainly at the lower decks. So if that's going to be an impact to you, then give that some consideration. Generally, forward or aft cabins are a little less expensive, but that's the trade-off, is that you might have some vibration there. Now, what if you get one at the absolute front end of the ship or the absolute rear end of the ship? Those can be really nice ones, right? Because you get a balcony level that is now facing out, either the aft, looking at the wake view, or facing forward. And facing forward seems like a really neat thing, right? You can see where the ship is going. The challenge is if you have a forward-facing balcony, it's windy out there. Those ships moving along, particularly at 20 knots or whatever, it's a pretty good wind coming at you. And a lot of times, even if the barrier is high, you feel that wind standing out there on your balcony. And that may really inhibit you from wanting to go out and take advantage of the balcony that you've paid for. So maybe not as good as it seems. Generally, I would think an aft-facing balcony would be more preferable, right? So there you can't see where the ship is going, but you do get a look at the wake behind the ship, and you generally don't have the wind issues that you have at the front of the ship. Where else on the ship should we try and avoid? Well, every cruise line on their website posts the deck plans for their ship. So my recommendation is to look what's around it. Is there what's above it, what's below it, what's next to it? So some things you might want to consider avoiding would be like being immediately below the pool deck, or certainly below the pool area of the pool deck. So deck chairs on the pool deck get dragged around during the day, or even in the evening sometimes. People are looking to move deck chairs and they drag them across that hard ground. You absolutely do hear that in your cruise cabin if it's directly above you. So I don't think being directly below a pool deck is generally a very good cabin. What's below you? Well, a lot of these ships have nightclubs, right? They can play loud music late into the night. And if you are directly above that, you may hear some of that noise. Same thing with being at the theater, more at the front of a lot of these ships. Now, generally that doesn't run as late into the night, but sometimes they show a movie on that screen late at night. And so you may still get some noise even well into the night from that. So what's directly above it? What's directly below it? What's next to it? Do you want a cabin that's next to a galley, right? So restaurants, if you're on, let's say you're on the pool deck. Okay, so I don't have pool deck chairs above me, but I am really close to the restaurant where they serve burgers and hot dogs and pizza and all those things. And there's a kitchen area behind that, and there's dishwashing, and they're banging carts around inside there. If that's right outside my room, that's not really a good thing for noise either. So what's around it? You can see the deck plans on every ship. You can figure out what's around my ship. Now, what's around my room. Now, one thing to consider also is an adjoining cabin. Do I want an adjoining cabin? Well, if you're going with multiple people and you know the people in the adjoining cabin, that can be a great thing because it essentially makes it one big room for more people. So that's cool. But let's say you're going and picking a room and you have an adjoining cabin and you don't know the people next door. So those rooms are connected by a door, like you see in some hotel rooms. There's a door on each side, and both parties need to open the door in order to be able to cross between them. But those doors are not near as sound tight as the walls. So those walls or those doors do tend to let a noise go through. So if you have noisy people next to you in a adjoining cabin, you're likely to hear that in your room. You may want to not book an adjoining cabin if you can avoid that. Another thing to consider when choosing where on the ship you want your room is it near a smoking area? If you're getting a balcony cabin and you're directly over a deck where they allow smoking, you are very likely to be able to smell that smoke while you're out there on your balcony. And that may not be ideal if you want to spend a lot of time out on your balcony. Now, if you're not bothered by the smell of cigarette smoke, then it's not much of an issue. The tricky part about this is most deck plans, or actually I haven't found any deck plans on any cruise line website that actually show you where the smoking areas are. So you may have to do a little more harder online research to find out where the smoking areas are on that ship. Like, for example, I was looking at deck plans on the Discovery Princess. And so there, I know, I've made on the ship, that on deck 7 aft, there is a deck area outside at the back of the ship on the starboard side of the ship. Well, that's a smoking area. And directly above that deck, deck 8, the Emerald deck, I believe it is, there are cabins with balconies. So if you have an Emerald deck balcony cabin on the starboard side at the back of the ship, you will likely smell cigarette smoke while people are out there smoking. So that's a harder one to figure out because you can't necessarily see it from the deck plan, but it is an important consideration. Another thing to consider regarding being high or low on the ship is, do you plan on taking the stairs a lot? So if you are on a deck very close to the pool deck, you're going to have a very short number of flights of stairs to go up to reach the pool deck. But you might have quite a few more flights to go down to like the promenade deck where restaurants, dining, shops, and other trivias and game shows and things like that are, right? So using the Discovery Princess, once again, as an example, deck 16 is the Lido deck, the pool deck, and deck 7 is the Promenade deck, containing lounges and some restaurants, including the Crown Grill and all that. Right? So that's deck 7, 16. Now there's no deck 13, but that's a large number of decks in between. So I like to think that like deck 11 is actually a pretty good deck. It's 4 decks down to get to the Promenade deck. It's 4 decks up to get to the Lido deck. So if I do want to take the stairs, and sometimes elevators can get crowded, if I want to take the stairs, I can go 4 decks up or 4 decks down, and I can get to wherever I want. Whereas if I'm on deck 12, okay, maybe I'm only a couple decks up to get to the pool deck, but I'm 5 decks down to get to the Promenade deck. So then, it gets to the point where maybe I do need to take the elevator. The elevator is another consideration. Do you want to be near an elevator or not? Elevators generally are, forward, middle, aft. There's group banks of elevators. Lots of people go there. It generates a fair amount of noise. And so if I'm close to the elevator, that's great. It's convenient, but it's not as good because more noise is created by that. So if you've got more accessibility concerns, then maybe being close to the elevator is good. Just recognize that you may incur a bit more noise as a result of that. Other things to consider are, what do you need in the room? So maybe accessibility concerns are part of that. So if you need an accessibility cabin, then you have to specifically look for that on board. Other things, maybe you want a larger bathroom. Maybe you want a couch in the room. So on a lot of cruise lines, a balcony cabin automatically comes with a couch. But on some cruise lines, it does not. So if a couch is important to you, you might have to book a deluxe balcony or a different type of room to ensure you have that couch. So look at the deck plans and also look at the room plans, right? You can usually get graphics of what the room looks like, showing you what the bathroom looks like. Does it have a small shower? Does it actually have a shower and tub? Usually you don't find that in a balcony cabin. Usually you've got to go up to at least like a mini suite kind of cabin to get a larger shower or tub. But if that's important to you, that's something to consider, right? So what does the actual map of my room itself look like? Does it have the things that I'm going to need to do what I want while I'm on the ship? Also related to where on the ship you want to be, do you want to be on the port side or the starboard side? I'm going to argue that for most cruises are round trip cruises, the answer is it doesn't really matter. So if you wanted one particular side, then you would be on that side for the way you're going there, but you're going to be on the opposite side coming back. Where this matters more is if you take like a one-way cruise. So let's say I'm doing a repositioning cruise on Alaska to Los Angeles cruise. And I don't want that morning sun hitting my balcony. All right, so that means if the ship is headed southbound, the port side of the ship, the left side of the ship, is going to get that morning sun. So if I don't want that, I'd want to be on the starboard side. Or maybe I'd rather have that morning sun than the afternoon sun. I want to sit out on my balcony in the afternoon and don't want that sun blaring in on me. So maybe then I might be more beneficial to be on the port side. You'll know based off the direction the ship's going, which side of the ship you want to be on. Now again, for a round trip cruise, maybe this matters less. But if you are on a longer one-way cruise, then you might want to give some consideration. Do I want morning sun? Do I want afternoon sun? That might be a factor to look at. Lots to consider, right? But one last thing I want to think about is sometimes you'll see cruise lines offer upgrades, right? So sometimes they'll send you an email a bit before the cruise. Are you interested in upgrading for a small fee? Or Princess allows you to bid for an upgraded cabin. And so, okay, maybe I've got a interior room, but now with this new deal they're offering, I can upgrade to a balcony for, $50 or $50 a day, or a couple $100 for the week. All right, well now a couple $100 for the week, that's probably a pretty good deal. That's probably worth it. But now you are running the gamble again. So if you have carefully researched your room and chosen that cabin, and now you put in for the upgrade, all those careful considerations that you've made are out the window. You might get the upgrade to theoretically a better room, but what the cruise line considers a better room and what you consider a better room may be two totally different things. So if you're really particular, I'd really be very, very careful about accepting that upgrade or bidding for the upgrade, because you lose the ability to watch out for all the considerations that they've offered. So I would much rather have an interior room without any extra noise than I would have a balcony room that's directly over the club or directly under the pool deck, and I've got pool deck noise coming in my room all day. That's not really an advantage to me. I'd be happier with a quieter interior room than it would with a loud balcony. Up to you. So lots of things to consider. I think some people don't put that much thought into it. They just pick a room, sounds good to me, or maybe I'll save a few dollars and pick that guarantee cabin. But if you really want a good experience while you're on board, these are some of the factors that you really need to take into consideration. I hope you found the video helpful. If you did, please like the video. If you enjoy cruise content, please subscribe. We'd like to be your provider for cruise content. Thank you very much for watching. And until we see you next time, we're wishing you smooth sailing. Take care.